Welcome to the Fantasy Beer League podcast, where you get half-decent advice from half-decent guys. Today, we're working under a bit of difficult circumstances. Vince came in contact with somebody with the coronavirus. He's since tested negative. Everything's okay, but we have to do this episode socially distanced. I'm your host, Sean Joyce. With me virtually is the president of the Stuart Little fan club, Justin Giel, and our in-house fantasy expert, Matt Senni. Justin, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I got the glasses on behind the screen. Feeling pretty good. Woke up feeling dangerous today.
All right, I'm happy to hear that. And Senni, I want to take a second to congratulate you for moving into your first official house. I know it was a stressful situation, but you're officially adulting, so let's give a socially distanced round of applause for Senni here.
I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate you were both here both days to help me do what I had to do to get in here, so it's exciting.
Yep. And really quick, Senni, before we get started, why don't you tell everybody who your favorite wide receiver is?
Well, without a doubt, my favorite wide receiver is Larry Fitzgerald, who's obviously just been the best receiver in the league for 15 years now. So,
Well, I don't have him ranked inside my top 50 this season, but he is one of the best of all time. I can't dispute that. So we're not going to talk about him today, but I am going to give you a quick fun fact that I don't know if you know. In his career, Larry Fitzgerald has more tackles than drops.
wow, that's ridiculous.
My favorite fun fact of all sports trivia. So with that, let's begin with the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals traded away running back David Johnson in exchange for receiver DeAndre Hopkins this offseason, giving Kyler Murray a true top target as he looks to improve off of his rookie season. Justin, how do you see Hopkins fitting into this offense?
I think he fits in very well. I really don't think it mattered where he went. He just wanted to be out of Houston. I think Arizona got him for pretty much nothing. I feel like with David Johnson, he was pretty much dead money, and they were either going to cut him or trade him, and they decided to trade him. But with Hopkins, I feel like Kyler Murray plays a similar style to Deshaun Watson. He's got a good arm, and he's able to scramble and extend the play, and Hopkins is kind of key in getting wide open with the extended play, so I think he's going to fit in very, very well.
I agree. I rank him as wide receiver 4. I'm a little bit higher on guys like Tyreek Hill and Julio Jones than him just because they already have familiarity with their quarterback. But I think all 4 are locks to be, including Michael Thomas, obviously. He's number 1. But I think all 4 of those guys are locks to finish as top 5 wide receivers this season. DeAndre Hopkins over 100 catches each of the last 2 seasons. Cardinals haven't had a receiver with over 100 catches since Larry Fitzgerald did it 3 years ago. I expect a little bit of regression, but like I said, he's still an elite option, and I think he goes for about 100 this season as well. Are there any other wide receivers that you like on this team, Justin?
I don't think there's anybody that I would go out of my way to draft. Maybe Christian Kirk as like a late round flex pick. I can see him being a deep threat, but I don't see him getting many targets in the red zone. So like you mentioned, I don't have Larry Fitzgerald in my top 50 either. You draft him for like sentimental value, really not much effort or production that he's going to bring to your team.
Yeah, I agree. I also like Kirk as a late round pick. Like you said, with Hopkins, I don't think the volume's there for him to sustain wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 numbers. But last season, he had 68 catches for 709 yards. There's a bit of upside with him, I think. But like you said, a late round flyer is all he is. A running back, now that they've moved on from David Johnson, they are rolling with Kenyon Drake. They traded for him last season, and after joining the Cardinals, he quickly became a fantasy superstar. I'm cautious about him doing it consistently for a full season. Last year, he had 3 games with over 100 yards rushing and 3 games under 40 yards rushing. So it's a bit of an up and down year, and he's never had more than 173 touches in a season. That's the most he's ever seen. So I have some concerns about him holding up and really being a workhorse for this team. There's no doubt that's how they want to use him. I just have some reservations about whether or not it works. So I like him as a running back too, somewhere between the 11 to 20 range. And if he can hold up, I guess he does have top 10 upside, but I don't think I would draft him as a top 10 running back this season. And then at the quarterback position, we talked a little bit about Kyler Murray at the top of the segment. I'm pretty high on him. I have him at QB4. He had nearly 4,000 passing yards and 20 touchdown passes as a rookie, over 500 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. like we talked about, the addition of DeAndre Hopkins is a huge bump for him. And players just tend to make the biggest leap in production from year one to year two. Do you also agree, Justin?
I do. When Kyler Murray came into the league, for whatever reason, I just wasn't big on him. But seeing what he did last year, and then looking at the options that he has this year, I only see him going up. So I think 4 is probably about where I would put him as well. Maybe 1 or 2 slots lower, but not much lower than that.
All right. And transitions nicely. We're going to talk about the Seahawks here in a second. Russell Wilson, I rank as QB5. And we're going to talk about Mr. Unlimited right now, Mr. Danger Russ himself. Is there a player less threatening off the field than Russell Wilson?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think there is.
He's Danger Russ on the field, but he's very less than so off the field.
Right.
But like I was saying, QB5 this season. He had at least 30 touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 seasons. He's incredibly efficient. The Seahawks were the 6th run-heaviest team last season, and he still put up incredible numbers. So even with limited volume, I still think that he is poised to put up significant numbers. You can trust him. You can rely on him. He doesn't get hurt. He plays every game. And he can still offer some rushing with his legs. He hasn't ran as much the last few seasons, but if he gets in a bind, he rolls out. He makes things happen, and he still has some jets, so he can still run if need be. At the running back position, there's another player I really like, Chris Carson. I rank him as running back 10, so he's right on my RB1 radar. Over 1,000 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns in each of the past 2 seasons. He saw an increase in passing targets last season, so they're getting him involved in the passing game, which is huge for PPR. He's a downhill, tough runner. Like I said, they're the 6th run-heaviest team in the league. He had 9 games with 20 or more carries last season, so the volume is there. He's clearly the top back on this team. I don't think that's questioned. I see him going in the 11 to 20 range in most drafts, but I think he's being largely overlooked. He's one of the few true workhorses left, and like I said, the volume's there, the efficiency's there. I'm all in on Chris Carson. Receiver's a little bit more difficult to gauge. Justin, which receiver do you like the most on this team?
I like Lockett the most, but it's close. He's always been pretty productive with Russell Wilson. Wilson loves throwing the ball to him, and he's shown that he can continue throwing the ball to him. But I see Metcalf having a big year, and I think that, to quote one of our friends, I think they kind of have a 1A, 1B sort of thing for the receiving core. I'd still probably take Lockett first, but like I said, it's very, very close.
I agree with you. I rank Lockett at 25 and Metcalf at 27. Lockett had over 1,000 receiving yards for the first time in his career last season, and he led the league with 23 red zone targets and 17 red zone receptions. So Russell Wilson likes to look his way in the red zone, which is why I give him a slight edge. But DK Metcalf, very impressive as a rookie last season, 900 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. One of the purest athletes in the NFL. If you ever seen him with his shirt off, he just looks ridiculous, like Goku or some shit. And as we were talking about before, I think I mentioned it with Kyler Murray, players tend to take the biggest leap in production and efficiency from year 1 to year 2. So I can definitely see DK Metcalf pushing for 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns this season. Just keep an eye on the roster moves when you're drafting these guys. That's also part of the reason why I have them in the 20s. The Seahawks are allegedly looking at signing AB or Josh Gordon. I have no idea why. Both guys can't seem to get it together and actually play football. But if they sign one of those guys, obviously Metcalf and Lockett, their value drops a little bit. I still think they offer some playmaking ability. They'll still be flex-worthy options, but they won't be the wide receiver 2s that you want them to be. And before we move on, I want to share with you guys what I'm drinking today. This is the Rusty Nail 2019 batch. I don't know if you can see that nice little label there. It had a wax seal that I cut my finger on. You can see I'm bleeding a little bit. So breweries, stop coating your shit in wax. I know it looks cool, but it's a pain in the ass. And this is what the actual drink tastes like. They age it for 15 months in 12-year bourbon barrels. It's everything you want in a bourbon barrel stout. Really sweet, really dark. A little bit of that bourbon comes out as you're drinking it, so it gets you a nice little buzz pretty quick. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. I don't know if the ABV is on the bottle in my clear sight, but I'm sure it's double digits. So before I get too sauced, let's keep going, chugging along here. Next, we're going to the Los Angeles Rams, previously known as the St. Louis Rams. Perhaps the most disappointing team last season. Rams finished 9-7, did not replicate the fantasy success that they found in 2018. They cut Todd Gurley and traded Brandon Cooks away to Houston. Justin, which Rams running back do you think has the most fantasy impact as the replacement for Todd Gurley?
For me personally, I would probably stay away from their running backs, but of the backs that they have, I have Cam Akers emerging as their top back, both for the team in general and then fantasy-wise. He's not going to do much as a receiver, but I see him taking a lot of goal line snaps, and I think that they have a true running back by committee sort of game plan going on.
I tend to agree with you. I rank Akers at 29. I have no interest in Malcolm Brown. I think that what we saw from him last year is more of the same that we'll see this year. He exists to spell the other running backs. He isn't going to get the majority of the snaps. Darrell Henderson, I rank as running back 33. Didn't get much action as a rookie, and I don't think the Rams would have used a second-round pick on Akers if they really thought that he was their guy. I think he'll see increased playing time, like you said, in a committee situation. It's a gut call. I like Akers just a little bit more. I think he offers a bit more upside, but both guys I think are just late picks that you're hoping to get flex production out of. All right, now, Senni, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know I hope you're ready by that mute button. I know I haven't gone to you in quite a bit, but the Rams have 2 fantasy-relevant receivers, and if you know the name of one, you can ice one of us when we get back to the studio, a.k.a. Vince's basement. Or if you know both of them, you can ice both of us when we get back.
I think there's a dude, his last name begins with a K. Is that anywhere on the right track?
Yeah, that you're on the right track. K is the right.
It's like Cup or Coop or something like that.
Yeah, you got one. Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is one.
Dude, I wouldn't know anybody else on this team. I really wouldn't. I don't know that any time that I've watched the Rams, I'm just going to take that and I'm going to call it a win there.
Did you have Cooper Kupp last season? I feel like you might have had him on one of your teams.
I think I probably did.
Yeah.
I can't see any other reason why I would know a player on the Rams.
All right. Well, Justin and I, one of us holds an IOU. You can get us with an ice when we get back. The other receiver that I want to talk about is Robert Woods. He was 9th in the NFL last season in yards per game and targets per game, 2nd in routes run per game, and the most fantasy points over the past 2 seasons. He has more fantasy points over the past 2 seasons, than Odell Beckham Jr., Chris Godwin, Juju Smith-Schuster, Amari Cooper, Adam Thielen, all guys that are getting drafted way ahead of him. I rank Robert Woods as wide receiver 10 this season. I think he's going to have another phenomenal year. He always produces. The only drawback is his touchdowns. Last season, he only had 2, so I'm sure that number is going to go up. Cooper Kupp, I also really like. I rank him as wide receiver 14 this season. 94 catches for 1,100 yards last season. The departure of Cooks frees up 72 targets for these guys. It's a pass-heavy team. Both guys are easily top 15 for me. You shouldn't have an issue taking them as mid-range wide receivers, somewhere in the 5th, 6th range. Justin, do you have a preference, one guy over the other, or do you agree that it's Woods just slightly above Kupp?
Yep, I agree. I have Woods at 11, but I give him the slight edge over Kupp. This will be his 3rd year or he's looking to get 130 targets for the 3rd year in a row this year. So, and then like you mentioned, losing Cooks, that's only going to increase the targets going towards him. So I do think I would take him over. I would take Kupp.
Okay, glad we're in agreement. Good stats there. Volume is everything in fantasy football. So targets, I actually value more than receptions, because if a guy's getting the opportunity, he's going to produce sooner or later. And then Tyler Higbee, I want to talk about too. He came on strong last season. He had over 100 yards in 4 of the last 5 games of the year. But he only had 21 catches through the first 11 weeks. So it was really just a huge spike at the end of the year that put him – he finished tight end 7 on the season, but that was really just those last 5 games where he tore shit up consistently. He had 48 catches in the last 6 weeks. So 21 through the first 11 weeks, 48 through the last 6. I wouldn't draft him expecting the same explosive numbers that we saw at the end of last season. He's still the 3rd option on this team, I think, behind Woods and Kupp. But that being said, I believe his numbers fall somewhere between the 1st and 2nd half of the year, which is still enough for solid tight end production. I would start him in all formats comfortably. I just wouldn't reach for him as like a top 5 guy because I'm not sure that you're going to get that same explosion that you got through the fantasy playoffs the end of the season last season. So, Justin, you have a beer from Los Angeles area, as I believe. So why don't you tell the people what you're drinking?
Sure. I'm drinking Naughty Sauce from Noble Ale Works. It's a golden milk stout aged on coffee, and I think it's delicious. It tastes like if you dipped a chocolate chip cookie in just like a cup of coffee. It's really good, and when you think of stouts, you think of what Sean's drinking, but this is what I'm drinking. Looks like a nice little pale ale, but yeah, super smooth, 5.4%. Nice and easy drinking.
It sounds delicious. Senni, were you laughing that it's called Naughty Sauce?
No. I'm laughing because I'm drinking champagne right now. And I'm just laughing at you guys talk about these beers and how great they are. And I'm just drinking one of the 10 bottles of champagne that people gave me yesterday.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was about to ask you what you were drinking. I saw your little flute.
Yeah, I've got a Lunetta Prosecco. Don't know that I've ever seen this before in my life. But when we were here yesterday, people just gave us all these different bottles. My wife, of course, put strawberries in it like I'm 5 years old. So maybe I'll finish this whole bottle by the end of this episode. We'll see.
That would be lovely. And I'm glad you're drinking champagne because you should be celebrating. We're about to talk about your favorite player's former team, Frank Gore's 49ers.
Oh, my gosh. so just so upsetting.
So the 49ers, NFC champions last season. They're an intriguing fantasy team. Played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about them in just a few minutes. But I love pretty much every player on the Chiefs team. On the 49ers, there isn't really a single player I'm overly enthusiastic about other than George Kittle. Kittle, I rank as tight end 2, comfortably right behind Kelce. At least 85 catches, over 1,000 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons. Clear top target on the offense, and I would draft him around the 3rd round, end of the 3rd round in all formats. Running back, I think, is a little bit more tricky. Justin, how do you feel about Raheem Mostert this year?
So I feel weird about him, I guess is the best way that I could put it. Most running backs don't hit their stride in year 5. You usually either come out of the gate or like you mentioned, like that between year 1 and year 2 gap is when you're going to hit it. But last year, he had a good stretch of games from the end of the year. From week 12 on, he was scoring at least 1 touchdown a game, so that's something to look into. But I do think that they're going to have a committee because they still have Tevin Coleman. So I think he's going to eat up a lot of the catches out of the backfield. But I think Mostert's will probably be the lead back. So I wouldn't take him early. I would take him in one of the later rounds, and I probably wouldn't have him as one of my top 2 running backs, but maybe like a flex option.
I agree with you. I'm very low on him. I have him ranked as running back 32, and I'll catch some heat because I know, like you said, he was one of the more valuable backs on this team last season. And right now he's going as a popular running back 2 pick. So he's going in that 11 to 20 range. But I don't think you can trust a Shanahan running back. Last season, Mostert, Breida, and Coleman all had over 500 rushing yards. Mostert led the bunch with 772, but he had 12 or fewer touches in 12 of his 15 games last season. Coleman had 12 or more touches in 8 of his 14 games played. So you're looking at a guy that's getting more touches, more volume. I know he got hurt and Mostert took over and excelled, but I just don't believe that they're going to go all in on Raheem Mostert like some experts believe. And again, just to reiterate this point, Mostert had 12 or fewer touches in 12 of his 15 games last season. Coleman had 12 or more in 8 out of 14. I'm not saying that I would take Coleman over Mostert, but I wouldn't feel great about starting either of them. Mostert, to me, is nothing more than a risky flex play. And Shanahan can turn a running back out of anything. Like you said, 5th-year bump is not very common. He was a career special teamer until last season when he was forced to play. Mm-hmm. For the rest of the offense, Jimmy Garoppolo I wouldn't take as my starter. Just the volume is not there. And there's not really any receivers I feel good about. Deebo Samuel I like, but, he got hurt. So the injury, I don't know. I've heard good things about him. I've heard the prognosis is that he's going to be back sooner than originally expected. But I still wouldn't take him in like the first 10 rounds. unless you have an IR slot. I know some leagues are expanding the IR because of coronavirus, but again, it's a bit of a risky call. The volume's low. They don't throw a lot. And the injury is worth monitoring because you don't know when he's going to come back. He might miss the first 6 weeks of the season. He might miss the first 10. So you got to wait and see with that. But again, a risky pick. I wouldn't draft him until the later rounds. One last thing I want to touch on with the 49ers, and then we'll be done with the NFC West. I want to talk about their defense. They were the number one defense last season, but I'm cautioning all our listeners, don't reach for defense. You draft your defense and your kicker with your last 2 picks. Last year, the Bears were the number one defense taken because they were the number one defense the year before. They dominated in 2018. Last season, they finished as the 16th best defense in fantasy. The year before, the Jaguars were taking in as like a 7th-round pick because they were so dominant in 2017. They finished as defense number 14 on the year. Defense is just too difficult to predict year after year because of the turnover, because of the scheme changes, because of the way offenses progress throughout the year. So just do not waste an early pick on your defense. All right, so I know Senni wanted to get in here and talk a bit about beards and growing them and whether or not it's worth it. So, Senni, the floor is yours.
All right, so I just want to be clear in advance to everybody here that I am not in any way acting like I'm like any kind of expert. I'm coming as a guy who has gone through trial and error when it comes to this. So if anybody knows me from 2018, I kind of just let my facial hair grow out at the time, and I had absolutely no process to it. I was just kind of letting it happen, just let it grow. I did like minimal combing, and by November, I started in July, I just kind of had hair like all up on here. It kind of looked ridiculous. It was out all over the place, and I finally just decided I was done with it, and I let it go. So this year, obviously, March, we're inside as a teacher. I'm inside for months at a time. And I figured I was going to, try again to put out the effort. I kind of let it come. But this time what I did was, I was shaving my cheeks. I knew I didn't want the hair on my cheeks. If you can't tell, I obviously do not grow hair straight down here. And it's funny because if you ever saw my father has a giant, very well sculpted beard. Obviously, I just did not get the genes. So I kind of know what I have to do. Everybody's different. Maybe you can grow a beard very easily like Sean and Justin can. Maybe you can't. One of the things that I didn't realize was I knew that I was dealing with having like a couple areas where, it was harder for me to grow like right here. And I kind of started to see what am I going to do about that. So one of the things is you got to, let it grow out over it. I just trimmed mine literally a couple hours ago. But obviously, the longer it gets, some of those areas that are patches, start to fill over. When I first started to see my friends again, I noticed that, everybody's got it somewhere, got little areas, even if you have a big beard, where it doesn't grow. So, if it's something that you want to do, you just have to be patient. You have to, take care of it. I mean, I know it doesn't look like it, but I've put an absurd amount of effort into doing what I had to do this time around. I've, made sure that I brush it every day. I've washed it. I've done everything that I needed to do. And it's funny because, guys that have had beards forever, like Sean and Justin, they know what to do, to shave it, to style it. I've been very open with them that I don't feel that I have like the artistic touch to trim it. I know a lot of people are nervous about trimming it. So I've told them straight up, my wife, once a week, she's the one that comes along and does all this. And I have no shame in that. I don't think I can do it, so I have her do it. But, it's one of those things that you have to take care of. You have to put the effort out, and you have to commit to doing it. Obviously, the big thing everyone's going to say to you is to let it grow. You do. There's a time when you have to just be okay with the way it looks, let it grow, and then after a certain amount of time, you can kind of decide what you want to start doing from there. So I really wanted you to get the opinion from somebody who has struggled with it, but also from experts like Sean and Justin who have had beards for years now. So I'm going to give it to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd hardly say I'm an expert. I do have good genes, like you said. That's a big part of it is what side of your family your beard comes from. But like you said, it's all about just letting it go. If I start growing a beard, like if I'm clean shaven, I have to let it go a month before I touch it because that's when it gets to a point where you can sculpt it and kind of see what you're working with. I grew my beard out for a full year, and it was like down to here. Maybe Vince can throw a picture of that up in post-production or something
Well,
like
I
that.
will definitely.
It was pretty insane. I remember.
Yeah. And then if you want to also, Vince, on the other shoulder, maybe throw up a picture of me without a beard because it looks totally different and not normal at all. So I need a beard. So I am very patient with it. I take very good care of it. Like Senni was saying, you have to use different products to really get it the way you want it to look. And it's taken me years to perfect the artistry of shaping it on my own, especially now with coronavirus. I have to wear a mask when I get a haircut, so my barber can't do it for me. So I have to do all these lines, and my neckline on my own. And I was always afraid to do that, just like Senni is, because I'm afraid I'm going to fuck it up and have to shave the whole thing off. I did that one time on New Year's Eve, and I've been terrified of like the guard slipping or missing a spot ever since. So there's definitely.
Sean, real quick, if you recall, when we were at my bachelor party and we've been drinking, I actually went upstairs and just drunkenly like shaved my face, I recall. So I've been in a similar situation. You should never, ever shave when you're drunk. It's not going to end well.
That is excellent advice. I'm going to throw it to Justin now to give us his take on beard growing and patience.
Yeah, well, I guess I can kind of piggyback on don't shave when you're drunk. That should go without saying, but yeah, see, I kind of have the opposite thing with trimming my beard. I've really never been afraid to touch it. So I draw like it's like this powder that I have where I'll draw like a line on my face so I know like where I'm going to, and then I just shave above the powder. So that's what I haven't touched my face in probably like 2 weeks, so it's kind of raggedy, but yeah, just kind of letting it grow. And I'm same boat as Sean. Like from clean shaven to like actually growing the beard, it's about, I'd say like 3 to 4 weeks before I will even touch it, just to make sure it like grows in full and I know where the lines are supposed to be. But yeah, just patience and everything. The thing that like with me, it's like right above my lip here, it doesn't fully connect so frequently. But yeah, just patience, I guess, is the best thing that I could say. If you want to grow a beard, just be ready to take care of it and be patient along the way.
My patch is right there on my mustache. Oh, yeah. I cover it up. I just push it along.
So one of the things I wanted to throw in was, we're talking about, growing the beards, and I kind of told you one of the reasons I started to do it this time around was because the rationale was that, I was inside this whole time. Well, now even with everyone going back to work, even when you go outside, you're putting that mask on. People can't even see you anyway. So, a lot of times, like, I'll have my wife trim me up, and then I'll realize I'm just going to put this mask on so it doesn't matter anyway. I'm going to things for work, and I'm trying to make sure I look presentable, and it doesn't matter anyway. So I kind of wanted us all to be able to give our input of, like, is now the time to just let it go, let it grow out, and just see if that's what you want, since people aren't going to see your face anyway. So my opinion would be, even though I'm not doing it myself, that if this was like the time that you wanted to just see what it looked like, because a lot of guys never give it a chance, don't even see what it's going to look like, I would say, since you're wearing a mask every day, now would be the time to do it.
We'll go around the horn here and each give our opinion. I definitely think if you've never grown a beard before, this is the time to do it. However, when I wear a mask and I have a full beard, my face is so itchy. I can't stand it. Every single second, I just want to go home and take it off. So I guess it depends what you do for work. If you're working from home and you don't need to wear it all day long, definitely go for it. I have to wear a mask for probably like an hour at a time at the most, just to go to the grocery store, the liquor store, wherever I spend the majority of my time. Those are usually the top two places. I can wear it for a short amount of time and it doesn't bother me that much. But after like 15 minutes, it does start to itch on my cheeks, on my chin. So if I had to wear it all day, I probably wouldn't have the beard. And if I had to go back to work full time, I'd probably have to shave the whole thing off. I'm going to go to Justin, and then Justin throw it to Vince, because I want Vince's take on the whole beard situation too. I forgot to go to him before.
Yeah, with wearing, I would say go for it now. If you're not going to be spending a whole lot of time out, who cares? And regardless, just It's your beard. Who cares what you look like? And then regarding the mask, I feel it most like the mustache sweat. So just being outside, like in the grocery store and then walking around breathing in the mask, that's where I feel it the most. And that's where I'm like most uncomfortable. Um, I wear a couple different masks. So like the neck sleeve one that I wear, that's where my face gets real itchy and I just want to die. But like the other mask that I have now that kind of loops around my ears, it's not too bad. Um, but yeah, I guess the best thing, just go for it. Why not? Give it a try. If it's not something you like, shave it. Best thing about hair is that it's going to grow back. And if you don't want it to grow back, you just cut it again. So yeah, then I guess I'll toss it to Vince.
So my take on it, I mean, when quarantine started, I decided that I was going to try and grow this out. But then I think it was like 2 months in, I realized that this beard was not working for me. I think it's definitely worth having the experience of seeing if you want the beard or not. But in my case specifically, it was just like long, straggly lines of hair, and I was like, this is not going to look good. As far as the idea of with the mask itself, I'd say yeah, like it really depends on what you're doing. If you're working in a place where you're wearing a mask all day, every day, shave it off. There's no reason to be sweating extra on your face and having extra sweat particles all in your mouth. But if you're not wearing it all day, every day, like I don't for my jobs, I don't know about you guys do for your jobs, and you want to grow a beard, go for it. This is definitely the best time because like you guys said, you're mostly indoors. So if you're indoors your own house and you have to go out and cover your face with a mask, the only person really seeing is you and your family. So you can kind of get an idea of how you like it. And then if you want the rest of the world to see it, then take off your mask safely, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And so there you have it. We have 4 out of 4 resounding yeses. If you want to grow a beard, grow a beard. Good saying. You want
Let
to
me
get
throw in one final comment. Once you let it grow out, right? Whenever you decide, like, let's say you want to keep it and you trim it, get a haircut too. Because you don't want to have like this nice trim beard and then have like a garbage like haircut. Sean always, every time I see he's got like his beard shaved up real nice, he's always got a great, nice haircut from a salon, and it just looks very well together. So just make the whole package worth it. Don't just kind of half-ass it.
Appreciate that, buddy. Thanks for the attractiveness shout out. You're looking good yourself over there in that little Zoom box. Speaking of great hair and beard combos, Travis Kelce plays for this team. Saying, you know what team Travis Kelce plays for?
If Travis Kelce doesn't play for the Chiefs, then I don't know anything.
You definitely know something, Senni. You got that one right. You can ice both me and Justin for that knowledge. Chiefs Super Bowl champs last season, perhaps the most fantasy-friendly team in all the NFL. I have all their skill players ranked inside of my top 5, one at each position, at their respective positions. So let's start with Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes. Typically, I like to wait on drafting quarterback because the position is so deep, but Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I feel like, are special cases. So, Justin, how early are you willing to draft Patrick Mahomes?
I actually have it where I have where I would draft him and where I think he's going to go. Or on a typical draft, I would probably look to take him towards the middle or end of round 2. I could very easily, depending on who you're playing with, I could see him going in the first round. I personally would never take a quarterback in the first round, no matter what type of league it is. Unless you have certain leagues where it's just like a stupid inflated scoring that's heavy towards the quarterbacks, but never been in that kind of league. But yeah, I would look maybe middle to end of round 2.
I think that's about fair. I have about a third round pick for him in standard scoring. And in 6-point passing touchdowns, I'm a little bit higher on him, probably that second round range that you were referring to. But in a 4-point passing touchdown league, it's kind of hard to justify taking a player at a position that's that deep, that high. Like, for example, I'm saying I would take Jackson, Mahomes in that 2 to 3 range, and then I wouldn't take another quarterback. I wouldn't rank any higher than like the 5th or 6th round. So, I mean, they aren't going to lose you your league, but missing out on a top-end running back could definitely lose you your league. So I'll always value receiver and running back higher than quarterback, but I do agree that Mahomes, Jackson's 2nd, 3rd round grades on them. As for the running back position, the Chiefs selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the final pick in the 1st round. And last year's Super Bowl hero Damian Williams has opted out of the season due to the coronavirus. I rank Allaire as running back 5. I'm very, very high on him. He produced as a rusher and a receiver at LSU, 17 total touchdowns last season, over 1,400 rushing yards, and 55 catches. And Andy Reid produces top-tier fantasy running backs consistently. In his 21 years of head coaching, he has produced 15 top 20 running backs and 10 top 10 backs. The talent and opportunity are there. It's his job to lose, and he's not going to lose it. They took a first-round pick on him. He has pretty much no competition right now. The other running backs on the roster are DeAndre Washington, Darrell Williams, and Darwin Thompson, guys that I'm sure you guys have never heard of because they've never really done much. DeAndre Washington's the only one I even recognize, and he was a backup on the Raiders. So Edwards-Helaire, I think, is going to produce monster numbers this season. You think back to Kareem Hunt's first year in Kansas City when Andy Reid made him a superstar out of nowhere. Helaire, I think, is going to end up going in the first round of a lot of drafts because there's a ton of hype around him, but I'm all in. I think he's going to cash in on that. I think he's going to be a top 5 back, better numbers than Alvin Kamara. Hot take of the day. There, said it. Now we're going to move on to the pass-catching receivers on this team. Tyreek Hill, I rank at wide receiver 3. In his past 2 seasons with Mahomes, he has 38 catches of 20-plus yards and 14 catches of 40-plus yards. So the dude is a threat to take it to the house on any play. He's arguably the fastest player in the NFL. He can score, like I said, from anywhere on the field, and he gives you those big explosive plays. So he's not the type of guy that's going to get you, 100 catches in a season, but he is likely to score 50-plus yard touchdowns. There's some leagues that give bonuses for that. And, I mean, just even without it in PPR, that's at least a 12-point play if he scores from over 50 yards out. So I love Tyreek Hill. The chemistry is there. I rank him slightly above DeAndre Hopkins for that reason. And this is, like I said, the most fantasy-friendly offense in the league. They have a ton of other receiving options. They each get some opportunity every week. Hill's the only one that I think has consistent volume in the wide receiver room. After Tyreek Hill, what receiver do you think has the most upside, Justin?
So I'm going to go with Mecole Hardman, mostly because Sammy Watkins has yet to finish inside the top 20 since joining the league, and he's plagued by injuries, and I just don't see him having a breakout year. And I've always liked Hardman, so I think of the true receivers on the team, I would take Hardman after Hill if I'm taking any of them.
I agree with you. Like you said, I don't really believe in Sammy Watkins. Last season, Hardman averaged 20 yards per reception on 26 catches. He's very similar to Tyreek Hill in his size and speed. They actually drafted him to replace Tyreek Hill when they thought he was going to be suspended. So I think his opportunity bumps up a little bit this season. And I think that he's more likely to score touchdowns than the other receiving options on the team. Demarcus Robinson, I think, offers a higher floor, but Hardman has the most upside, which is what you're looking for with a pick that late in the draft. These are guys that we're talking like end of your draft, take them, hope that something pans out. And if it doesn't, you didn't waste anything on drafting them. At the top of this segment, we talked about where to draft Mahomes. I think there's a similar conversation to be had about Travis Kelce and his big, beautiful beard. Justin, how early are you willing to draft Travis Kelce?
So and I really have no reason not to like him. The Chiefs are so fun to watch. I don't know. Growing up, I never liked them. But besides that, I would probably look to take Kelce somewhere in the second round or early third round if he slips that low, just because I see him finishing with better numbers than a lot of the big name receivers in the league. Because he's pretty much their number 2 wide receiver on the team. So I would safely draft him second or third round if he's still available then.
I put a second round draft grade on him. He's my tight end 1 this year. In other seasons, I would argue that he deserves first round consideration. But the position's the deepest it's been in such a long time. I mean, guys like, George Kittle, Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, Tyler Higbee we talked about before. All those guys put up solid numbers. So the disparage between tight end 1 and tight end 10 isn't what it used to be in years prior. But Travis Kelce led tight ends in scoring for the 4th straight season. And, he's arguably Mahomes' favorite target, definitely the most reliable target. He's going to get volume every week. He led tight ends in targets last season. He's just a guy you can count on week in and week out. I agree. I would take him in the second round and feel good about it. But if you don't take him there and pass him up for a low like RB2, high tier RB2 or a high end wide receiver, I wouldn't look at you funny because the position of tight end is deeper than it's been in quite a long time. There's another tight end I'm going to talk about in just a bit with this next team, the Denver Broncos. Broncos are an exciting young fantasy team with a lot of offensive talent. I believe there's a ton of upside for this team, but there's always some risk in drafting unproven players. The Broncos added former Charger Melvin Gordon in free agency. How do you see him fitting in with this offense, Justin?
I see him fitting in pretty okay. I think early in the year they're going to test him out just to see if he's worth the money that they gave him and if they're going to look to extend him. But the drawback is splitting the carries with Lindsey. Lindsey proved that he can be an explosive player, make a lot of big plays, and I think that could kind of cut down on Gordon's production and the numbers that he's going to put out.
I sort of agree with you. I think he's in a committee, like you said. I think he's the lead back in this committee, so he's going to get the majority of the carries, which I don't think is that dissimilar from his situation last season with Austin Eckler when he returned from his holdout. He only played one full season in his career, so health is always going to be a concern with him. And he has upside in pass catching ability. He has at least 40 catches in each of his last 4 seasons. Denver was the 9th rush heaviest team last season, so the opportunity is still there even if he is in a committee. Philip Lindsay had 27 red zone rushing attempts, 25 of which came from within the 10-yard line. Royce Freeman had 24, so only a 3 carry gap. And obviously, you'd much rather have Philip Lindsay than Royce Freeman. I expect Melvin Gordon to get most of the work from in close because he's been very efficient from that range. I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns in this offense. That just proves before. I mean, the Broncos ran the ball, 51 times last season in the red zone. And Senni, you can check my math on that. 27 plus 24, that's 51, right?
I said yeah, and then realized yeah, that's right.
Okay, you're the math teacher, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't being stupid. Thank you. So, yeah, they like to run when they're in close, and I think Melvin Gordon has proved that he's a good touchdown scorer from in close. I think he's going to score a lot on this team. I would draft him as a low-end running back 2 or a high-end flex. I don't expect him to be as dominant as he used to be, but I still think he's going to put up pretty good numbers with what we have there. I don't view Philip Lindsay as anything more than a handcuffed or a low-end flex in deep leagues. I think that his opportunity just got taken in more than half with the addition of Melvin Gordon. So Melvin Gordon's the guy I want. Philip Lindsay I would only take in deep leagues or as a handcuff to Melvin Gordon later in your draft. I also like Courtland Sutton on this team. I rank him as wide receiver 16. He had 72 catches for over 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. And he saw at least 5 targets a game last season. I said earlier that targets mean more to me than receptions. He's getting a ton of looks. Drew Lock didn't shy away from him when he took over the starting job. He's clearly the number 1 wide receiver on this team. Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler are guys I would take on flyers later in the draft, but I don't expect either to emerge as players that are going to be worthy of starting every week this season. And now let's get to the tight end that I like quite a bit, Noah Fant. He had solid numbers his rookie year, and his athleticism just jumps off the tape. With the speed of their wide receivers, like I said, they added Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Courtland Sutton's proven as a number 1. I think Fant's going to work a lot of those underneath routes, those shallow crossing routes, and he is going to rack up a lot of yards after the catch with those types of plays, especially if they can stretch the field wide, short passes underneath, get the sideline. He could be gone. I've seen a ton of things that are encouraging from his tape from last season. If you just look at his highlights, you can see that he is poised to take that sort of jump from low-end tight end to top-tier guy. I think he's a sneaky top 10 tight end this season. I rank him as tight end 10 in my rankings. And you can get him with good value. He's going pretty late. He's going as tight end 17 with his ADP right now. So draft him late draft him late and hope that things work out for you. And I have quite a feeling that they will. especially with Drew Lock. When he took over, no offense, production just went way up. Speaking of Drew Lock, I value him as a top 20 quarterback worthy of starting in 2 QB leagues. The offense has plenty of talent, that as we've just gone over, and I still think their defense is a little bit shaky. They have good pass rushers, but I don't know. They weren't that great last season. I think they're going to be playing from behind quite a bit. So if they're throwing the ball, Drew Lock is obviously going to put up good numbers. He's worth a late pick if you don't love your starter. If you miss out on a top-end guy and you kind of have a guy that you're not sure about, like maybe a Cam Newton or even a Matt Ryan, you're not 100% sold that they're going to put up the kind of numbers that you're looking for from your quarterback. You can take Drew Lock as an insurance policy later and hope that he breaks out. I think he's a breakout candidate this season. I like this team a lot. They're from Denver. Denver's in Colorado, one of the biggest beer states. Jesus Christ, I almost called it a country and a city. It's a fucking state. One of the biggest beer states in the country. Justin, please tell the people what you're drinking.
Sure. So I'm drinking a New Belgium 1985 IPA. Got a pretty cool can label. I like the little skeleton dude, but it's amazing. I really like this a lot. It's got mango and spice in it. You get the spice on the back end, the mango's right on the nose. It's delicious. 12-ounce cans, comes in a 6-pack. I could definitely drink a whole 6-pack like in one sitting. It's very, very good beer. Highly recommend it.
I want to steal one of them if you have a pack.
This is the first one that I opened, so
All right,
plenty left.
All right. I know it's a far drive for you, but you owe me one.
Yeah, I got you.
All right, let's talk about the Chargers. That was terrible. Senni, I know you're a big Schwarzenegger fan. I don't know if you ever saw the clip, but there's a video of him when he became mayor of San Diego saying, "Go Chargers, go!" So I would appreciate it if you'd be willing to do your best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Maybe flex, because I know the muscles are pretty much there for you. So give us your best Schwarzenegger. Go Chargers, go!
Go Chargers, go.
Actually, that was really good. That was actually awesome. That was way better than I expected it. Good stuff, Senni. Appreciate you doing that for us. So the Chargers drafted Justin Herbert and Phillip Rivers left to join the Colts. Tyrod Taylor, a.k.a. T-Mobile, is slated to start the season, but Herbert is likely to take over the job at some point. Justin, how do you think the change at quarterback affects the weapons on the Chargers?
I don't think it will a whole lot. They still have the offensive talent there. Tyrod Taylor, he wasn't the greatest, but he's good enough to be able to get the ball to. So you got Allen and Williams as the receiving core. He's got Eckler out of the backfield, and then Hunter Henry is going to be great in the red zone. So I don't think they're going to be impacted too much. Maybe like a mid-season switch might cause like a little hiccup for a game or two, but I still think I would draft several players from the team if they're still available.
This is interesting because I sort of disagree with you. I'm very low on the Chargers offense this season because of the quarterback play. I mean, Phillip Rivers has been average the last few years, but I know what to expect from him. I don't expect much passing volume from Taylor or Herbert. I'm not sold on Herbert yet. I think he's going to take a while to learn the system and become familiar with the NFL style of play. So I downgrade pretty much every position. I would normally have them as top 10 talents. Now I put them in more of the top 20 range. Austin Eckler I rank as running back 13. As previously mentioned, Melvin Gordon joined the Broncos, so the backfield is mostly his. But Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly are lingering, and I think they're interesting late flyers. Eckler is going to see a ton of the work in the passing game, but I'm not sure that he's going to see a majority of rushing attempts. Last season, even when he had most of the work to himself, he only had 4 games where he saw double-digit carries. He had a ton of receiving work. He had the second most receptions among running backs and 10th in the NFL overall with 92. But it's all short passes, especially, and which I think benefits him with a young quarterback and a quarterback that isn't really known for his arm. So I think he's going to see a lot of that underneath stuff, a lot of that check down stuff. So I do think that he'll put up flex-worthy numbers, RB2-worthy numbers. Like I said, I rank him at 13. So I think he's a starter in all formats. But I don't see him being a workhorse in this offense. I don't see him touching the ball 20 times. I see him catching a lot of passes. I see him running after the catch and doing most of his damage with those types of points. I don't see a lot of rushing coming from him. Justin Jackson's the guy that I would think is going to take the goal line work, the in between the tackles type of work. But I would still probably only rank him, in the 30s. I don't think it's going to be that close. I just don't think Eckler is going to be the RB1 that you came to know last season. Keenan Allen's another guy who I love from a real life standpoint. Last season, he had the third most receptions in the NFL with 104. He had around 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, one of the best route runners in the league. Tyrod and Herbert are going to target him enough to support wide receiver 2 numbers, but the dip in quality at quarterback play, I think, limits his upside. I just don't see him putting up a 100-plus catch season in an offense that's going to struggle. I wouldn't stay away from drafting him. I just wouldn't draft him as high as like 10, maybe even not 15. I think he's a mid-round type of guy. I think there's some risk with taking him. But the talent is definitely there. So if I'm wrong about T-Mobile or Justin Herbert, then he does have enough upside, and he's definitely talented enough to produce wide receiver 1 numbers. Is that what you were thinking, Justin? Do you view Keenan Allen as a top 10 guy?
Yeah. Like you said, Bateman is his talent, and he is one of the best route runners in the league. And he does it all pretty much while wearing a hood while he plays, which is kind of weird.
No, he does wear those long sleeves, and they play in California, so it's kind of bizarre that he wears long sleeves when it's like 90 degrees and humid, but it works for him. So yeah, I mean,
Keenan Allen would be maybe not top 10, maybe top 15-ish. I would probably put him.
Okay. And what about Hunter Henry? I have notes on him too, but I'd like to hear your take on how high you rank him.
Probably around I haven't had that listed yet, but probably around 10-ish or so, between 10 to 12, just because I know health is a concern with him. So that would be most worrisome for me.
Yeah, I'm a little low on him partially because of that and everything I just said about the quarterback change. I'm very skeptical about the Chargers performing well. One thing to note about that, though, if you want to take the other side of this argument, is that the interceptions from poor quarterback play don't show up on the stat sheet for wide receivers, running backs, or tight ends. So if the quarterback throws 3 picks and 400 yards and your guy gets over 100 yards, you had a good day. You don't give a shit that quarterback sucked ass that day. So I just don't see it working out as well as it did with Phillip Rivers. But like you said, Hunter Henry, health is a concern. He's never played a full season. And I even though I'm lower on Eckler and Allen, I still think they're going to produce enough and get enough looks that they can support wide receiver 2, running back 2 numbers. Hunter Henry as the third option on a team that I have low confidence in the passing game, I just don't think he's going to produce top 10 numbers this season. When he's healthy, he is one of the when he's healthy, he is one of the most dominant tight ends in the league. So if you draft him, I'm not going to judge you for it. I just think that you need to temper expectations with him this season. And one last thing about LA, I also have an LA beer here. It is called Lagoon, and it is by Unsung Brewing. It's got a nice pink can. It's a hazy double IPA. It's got Galaxy, Mosaic, and Azaka. Is that right, Justin? You're the hops guy. You know
Azaka? Yeah, Azaka's a hop.
All right. And here we go. I'll let you know how it is. Tastes like a hazy double IPA. Citrusy, tropical, smooth mouthfeel. Goes down really nice. You don't get a lot of the Mosaic. I'm not a big Mosaic fan, so usually if the beer's heavy on Mosaic, I'm not going to rate it highly, but this is solid. This is a good IPA. Easy to drink for a higher ABV. So good stuff. Again, that's from Unsung out in Anaheim. Go Ducks. All right. Let's finish this episode up with the Raiders. Now, boys, I want you to knock on wood if you're with me. This was going to work a lot better if we did it in person, but give me some knocks. Give me some knocks on your desk or your laptop, whatever you're doing. All right. Last year's Hard Knocks team are solid. I like them. There's a few interesting names I think that you should remember on draft day. Darren Waller, a.k.a. Waller the Baller, was one of the more pleasant surprises last season. I rank him at tight end 5. He finished last season with 90 catches and over 1,100 yards, pretty much out of nowhere. He only scored 3 times, which is a bit of a concern, but I think that number increases with the amount of looks that he gets. Despite the low touchdown numbers, he still finished as tight end 4 in PPR last season, and the receivers on this team are still a bit unproven. So I think he's the top receiving target on this team. As for the wide receivers go, though, how do you feel about them, Justin? Is there anyone on this team that you think is going to make a fantasy impact?
Not really, but the note that I have is that I have Waller as the top receiving target from this team. So I do agree with you on that. Yeah, I'm really not sold on their receiving core. I'd like to see what Ruggs can do. He was the first wide receiver taken in the draft, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I think he went before CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, so having him taken before the 2 guys that you thought were going to get taken first, I think he's got something to prove and live up to. So I'd like to see him live up to that. Good.
No, I agree. He is the one that I have most confidence in, I think. He's built sort of like Tyreek Hill. He's crazy fast. He ran a 4.27 at the combine. Again, it's 4.27, so sub 4.3, which is fucking ridiculous. So he's a threat to score from anywhere on the field. I expect the Raiders to use him the way that the Chiefs use Tyreek Hill, which I sort of alluded to before. I think he has the most upside of any receiver on this team. I think the safest pick is probably Hunter Renfrow. He had a pretty solid year last season. He primarily plays from the slot, and he finished last year with back-to-back 100-yard games with a touchdown. So, yeah, I think he could be a PPR machine if there is real chemistry between him and Derek Carr. He was surprisingly good at Clemson. And when you say a guy is surprisingly quick, surprisingly good at wide receiver, that means he's white. That's pretty much like the code. If a guy is deceptively fast, it's because he's a white guy. So Hunter Renfrow is a guy I like. He's built like Tom Brady was coming out of college. He doesn't look like an athlete, but he's always open and he always catches the ball. I like Hunter Renfrow. If the volume is there for him, I think that he can put up solid numbers. I think he's worth a late flyer. Henry Ruggs, I like just a bit more. I think that he is a bigger deep threat option and a bigger big play option. I want to wrap this up with my last guy on the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, by the way. I think I might have called them the Oakland Raiders before. I forgot they moved to Las Vegas. Senni, did you know that they moved to Las Vegas?
Only because you told me.
Oh, okay.
I didn't.
So there's Vince, you didn't know?
I didn't know they moved.
Yeah, this is their first year in Vegas, and unfortunately, you can't even goddamn enjoy it because of coronavirus. But there is one player that I enjoy very much on this team, and that is Josh Jacobs. Last season, he led all rookies in rushing yards with 1,150 yards in only 13 games played, by the way. So he didn't even finish a full season. I think he played like 2 or 3 games with a broken right shoulder or a dislocated shoulder. Dude is a tough
Something
son
like
of a
that,
bitch. Yeah. So I really admire that. He was third among all running backs in yards per game with 88.5. He's one of the few workhorses left in the league, and I expect John Gruden to find ways to get him more involved in the passing game this season. I think part of the reason that he only had 20 catches last year is because he wasn't so sound in pass protection, and head coaches look for running backs that can pick up blitzes, identify where the blitz is coming from. So as Josh Jacobs becomes more familiar with the NFL style of play, I think he's more likely to get more snaps and passing downs and ultimately become a full-time workhorse for this team. He already gets a majority of the carries, and I think once he gets involved in the passing game and can figure out passing schemes, he's going to be an unstoppable force. Do you concur with that, Justin? Anything else you wanted to add about the Raiders?
No, I mean, I agree. I'm big on Josh Jacobs. Always liked him, and then it was a shame to see his season end kind of soon last year. But the numbers that he put up in 13 games are nothing to shy away from. I guess the only other thing that I would add is that Hunter Renfrow kind of reminds me of like a Wes Welker, where working out of the slot and he's always open. That son of a bitch always caught the goddamn ball. and the yards after catch were always there. So that's the kind of comparison that I would make. But apart from that, yeah, really nothing else that I can add.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Again, we're with you every Wednesday. Maybe not this episode. Hopefully we can get it up tomorrow. But if we can't, I will cut Vince some slack because this is extenuating circumstances. But we're on the YouTubes, and the audio podcasts are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FantasyBeerLG. That's the letters LG at FantasyBeerLG. I'm Sean Joyce. He's Justin Giel. And lastly, but definitely not leastly, here's Matt Senni with his advice of the week.
No matter how pretty you are or how pretty you think you are, you're not a real man until you at least try to grow your beard.
Amen to that, my friend. I became a man when I grew my beard. So grow those beards, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, ladies, you do it too. Do your best. God bless. Have a great week. Thank you for watching.
And good night.